Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, please give a like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Noel Brue on the podcast with us. She's a pro natural physique competitor. She's a gym owner, an online fitness trainer, and she's coming to us all the way from Wisconsin. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Noel, thank you so much for being on.
Hi, thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm great. And I mean, it's so great having you on, but why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you to make that healthy and fit lifestyle change?
Sure. So in 2000, I think it was about 2012 is when I really adapted and shifted my lifestyle. Out of college, received a job offer from the company I was working with, which was a corporate company. I worked in management and in the eyeglass field, so nothing related to fitness. And, climbed the ladder and was in a regional management program and enjoyed what I did in helping others achieve their goals through business. And then once I went through that program, there wasn't a position for me. So I took a position at another company and was regional director of operations for all of the North USA. So it was a lot of travel, back and forth. I was younger. Nobody wants to hang out with their boss. All my friends were out doing things, and I was kind of by myself. And then, in the corporate world, it can be quite the numbers game, and in anything, a lot of politics. And it, for me, caused me quite a bit of anxiety. And as a way to manage anxiety, I started doing yoga in my hotel rooms and, some deep breathing. And so I decided that, actually, to go more into detail, I actually had like a major panic attack on the side of the road one day and couldn't, had to pull over and couldn't get my bearings and decided, that this type of lifestyle wasn't for me and I needed to make a shift. So I decided that I was going to leave that position and I left and went to Costa Rica for a month and got my yoga certification. And that kind of all started my fitness career. I came back, for somebody like me who's very much a type A and likes to be in control. And, it was really a bold move for me to leave my job and not have anything else in the works. Had a little bit of an idea and I came back and started working at a small little gym that offered kickboxing classes. And one day they asked me if I wanted to teach a kickboxing class and I did it and everybody enjoyed it. And most importantly, I enjoyed doing it. And so got my group fitness certification, started teaching classes, and then decided, I wanted to do personal training. So it was like one thing led to the next and started doing personal training and training out of a local gym. And I really wanted to show my clients that if you set a goal, you can achieve anything. So I decided I was going to do a fitness competition, not knowing anything about it, not knowing what I was doing, and kind of jumped in and started training and lifting and, found joy and almost like therapy from it. And not almost like, but definitely therapy from it. And, just found a huge passion in weightlifting and went in and did my first competition and did well, and then also realized how much confidence it gave me to get on stage in a swimsuit and being critiqued about your physique. You have to definitely learn to have hard skin and know it's part of the sport that they're trying to help you become better and learn from each competition. So I did my first one and did really well and enjoyed it and actually became a pro.
Wow.
After
your first show?
After my first show, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it was exciting. However, I went 2 weeks later and did a pro show and got last. So, knocked me right back to reality and really, okay, this is a whole new ball game. And, you need to take a step back and learn a little bit more about the competition world, the competing world, and what it takes to be a bodybuilder, a physique athlete, a figure athlete. And that's where I started in figure. So I took a step back and started playing more in the kitchen with nutrition and learning about what worked for my body and how to get it to where I wanted to, and jumped back on stage a couple of years later and jumped into, did a figure show, but then transitioned into physique 2 years later.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So I always sort of like to make the point when you're getting started in the gym, especially when it comes to, like you said, you were doing these classes, and then when you really got started into the fitness aspect and the weight training part, I always like to say if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how people got the way that they look, whether it comes to their diet, their nutrition. I mean, how many reps they do, what exercises they do, all those little things add up to the final package that people end up seeing. Was that a difficult struggle for you to sort of figure out what worked best for your body personally? Because I always like to say, if you were to walk up to someone in the gym and say, like, wow, you look amazing, what did you do for this body part to make it look like that?
Mhm.
What they did for them 99% of the time isn't going to work as good for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, everybody's different. That's
Mhm,
that's what makes us unique. No two people have the same body. No two body compositions are
mhm,
going to look the same. So, yeah, like you said, what works for one won't work for another. And it is, I mean, I'm still learning
mhm,
what works for me and how to transition things and how to change things up because what was working for me can
mhm,
shift, into something else. So, one of the things that I've done from the beginning is, I have a notebook and I write down my workouts and I, track my weights and I use my fitness pal and I track my nutrition, and I myself work with a coach. So we have everything, logged and pictures, for the different types of progress. So, it's always a constant learning process as to what works. And so it did take time, but there are certain things that I know do work specifically for me, especially in my lean down
mhm,
process. So and the time that I need to get to where I need to
mhm,
go, like we've learned those things
mhm,
throughout the way. And that's just a lot of constant tracking,
mhm. Yeah.
and then being consistent in the gym day in, day out. And then most importantly, being consistent with your nutrition, which
Oh.
is tends to be the hardest aspect
Mhm,
of not only competing, but
mhm.
general weight loss and lifestyle transformation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like they always say, abs are made in the kitchen, and it's about 80 to 90% nutrition. That's a huge, huge thing that a lot of people just don't understand. But going back to when you started working out, everyone always seems to have that one body part that really takes off really, really quickly, and they don't have to train as much. And then everyone always has that one body part that really lags behind that they kind of have to
Mhm.
put into overdrive. What were those for you?
So my legs grow
Mhm,
faster than my upper
mhm.
body does, and so I don't have to train legs as often.
Lucky.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I
Mhm.
train them though,
Yeah.
and I like volume,
Mhm,
so I train volume. But and for me, I'm petite, I'm small,
mhm,
and my back
mhm.
is, although I think I have a great back, I never seem to get the width out on stage.
Oh
It
yeah.
could be and that's also really working on the posing as
Mhm.
well to get those lats to come out.
Oh, absolutely. Like
So,
me too. I'm blessed with a big back, but I mean, it's like that doesn't really do anything. Where I can train back once a month and it would still look great. But then legs for me, like I'm 6'3", so it's really hard. I have to train legs a lot because and I was a
mm.
pitcher too, so just naturally I was just kind of a lanky, long. So yeah, that's definitely been a struggle for me. But at what point, I mean, you said that you kind of wanted to do a show. Did you know, I mean, you kind of did one already ahead and got your pro card already. Was that just a huge shock for you? Because you're probably the second guest that we've had on out of the 90 that we've had that won their pro card at very, very early on. Was that just a huge shock to you that you're like, wow, I'm a pro already?
Yeah, it was a huge shock. I mean, um, you go in not, for your first show, I didn't know what to expect in general,
Mhm,
and then to go on stage and win, you're just almost like, wow, how did that happen? And that's how it was for me. How did that happen?
mhm,
How did that happen? And so I almost had to backtrack
mhm,
to figure out what worked it and how it happened for me because, like I said, I chose a show that was local to my area and I didn't really know too much, did some workshops and researched weightlifting, but I didn't have a lot of knowledge or
mhm,
background of the industry. So, then I had to backtrack and start to do my research and learn. But, you
mhm.
know, shock or excitement,
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's just an absolutely huge thing. But you kind of touched base on it earlier. I mean, if you were to poll the general population, you'd get a small singular percentage of people that would be willing to go in front of on stage in a bikini basically and pose and get critiqued. And you said that it was like something that you really, really had to work on. But what were some techniques that you used to sort of just convince yourself to get up there on stage? Because, like I said, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of confidence. Was that something that you really had to work on, especially for your first show?
Yeah, for the first show, absolutely. I mean, I think it's one of those things where you take a few deep breaths and you just go, and probably half the time you don't even know what's going
Mm-hmm.
on. You just smile and pose, and as soon as your back turns, the judges let that smile go
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
start breathing. I mean, well, that's the one thing that people don't know is that, like, it is hard. The
Mm-hmm.
posing is hard, and you'll probably be more sore than the gym as the day after a show,
Mm-hmm.
because the judges want to get it right, and it's a tough job because when you go on stage as a pro, everybody's in it to win it, and
Yep.
everybody brings their best. And so the judges have, a tough job, and they need to really take a look at the physiques and critique them and move the girls around. So sometimes you're up there 20, 30
Mm-hmm.
minutes, the quarter turning, and then in the physique doing mandatories.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely. Like a lot of people don't realize that. And that's been the number one thing that we've learned from this podcast is that posing for a lot of people is the hardest thing. It's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than the workouts that you do. Was that a struggle for you starting out? Because I mean, figure and physique are different posing, but for figure at least, was that difficult too? Just learning those poses and also the high heels that they make you wear is kind of ridiculous. Was that a struggle too?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm short,
Mm-hmm.
so I've always worn heels.
Oh,
So,
yep.
so heels I was okay with.
Mm-hmm.
Posing, oh yeah. I mean, at the beginning, it was not pretty,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that you work on it throughout your whole career.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a continuous work in progress. Just like I think fitness is a
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle, is a continuous work in progress. So it was definitely hard. It continues to be hard. It will continue to be hard after any time I get on stage. So
What was the most difficult thing between going from figure to physique? Because for people that don't realize, physique is more of like the classic bodybuilder posing where you do, front double biceps, you do back, whereas figure you don't do those poses. Was that a difficult adjustment for you?
it was a natural
Mm-hmm.
adjustment for me. One of the things I like about physique, or some federations will call it fit
Mm-hmm.
body, some will call it athletic, is the mandatory
Yep.
posing, and it's what distinguishes the class.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that distinguish that class. So, as I continue to learn about my own body and my own training, and be able to get myself to come in leaner and more conditioned, it was a natural transition. And learning the poses, of course, was hard,
Mm-hmm.
and which ones are best for my body and how to get the best look. So that's definitely hard, but again, that's just practice continuously.
What is your favorite physique pose and least favorite physique pose?
My favorite physique pose is side chest.
Ooh.
And my least favorite, I mean, I like them all, but I think the one that is the most difficult for me is the side tricep.
Oh, yep. Yeah, that's one that we
So
hear a lot. That and abs are probably the two ones that we hear all the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
abs as well can be difficult.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, for everyone, that seems to just be difficult because, and people don't realize that you guys are flexing literally everything too with all these poses, and you got to get the right lighting. I mean, it's so much
Right.
work that a lot of people just don't understand. But probably my favorite question to ask, whether it's a band or whether it's a health and fitness guest on my podcast, is for my bands. I always like to ask, what's that feeling like performing live, being on stage and with the crowd, and that also applies to the bodybuilders I have on the show. What is that feeling like for you when you get to step on stage and show off all of that hard work that you've been working months upon months for, and to finally just be able to see like this is what I've worked for.
It's exciting. I mean, it's so hard to describe. There's no feeling like it. It's like, everything you worked for comes down to that moment, and you just kind of let go and have fun, because at that point everything's in the judge's hands, as long as you did everything up till that point, and then go out, and
Yeah.
that's all you can do. And it's fun. I mean, I like to say, like, when I go on stage, I'm almost having like a Beyonce moment. Like, she
Yeah.
she has her alter
Mm-hmm.
ego. It's not natural for me to be center of attention, but then when I go out on stage, I transform into this person that I'm not normally like, and I love that
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. And that's one of the things that competing has taught me is that I can do anything
Mm-hmm.
as long as I put in the work for it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that just shows, and especially with all the dieting and all the other stuff that bodybuilders have to go through. I mean, it really is just amazing to show what that can do. But I also like to ask, since I'm a very pale person myself, I don't know if you can tell, but what is that experience like for you when you put that tan on? Because I mean, everyone always talks about, like you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to
Right.
pop out. What is that like for you, that process?
The tanning process. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's necessary. You know, it can be a lot
Yeah.
because you have so much going on. You have certain times you need to eat, and then you have to go get your spray tan, and it takes time to dry. But I've found an amazing tanning product
Mm-hmm.
that I use, and it's so simple and easy to put on. It dries quickly, it doesn't smell bad, and you put it on in the evening, you touch it up in the morning, and then as soon as you're done with the show, you shower and it leaves a great afterglow.
Mm-hmm.
So, the process is quite daunting, but it's necessary for all the stage lights
Yeah.
and showing off your physique. So, it's kind of the day before or the day of the show, it's kind of like your glam day.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of try to enjoy every minute of it.
Oh
So
yeah.
I mean, it's to look at yourself that way and then to see other people look
Mm-hmm.
at you when you're out and about, you're kind of like, but
Yeah,
so
that's.
it,
I mean, it's a great feeling, but people just don't realize all the stuff that goes into it. Like, you can't really sit down on things, you can't really touch anything because you
oh,
don't want it to
right.
spread. Like, you basically have to be a statue for the basically until the show comes, and then afterwards you can kind of be a little bit better. But I mean,
Right,
it's
let's
just.
talk about the traveling too when you have to tan. I mean, you
Oh
have to
yep.
bring your own sheets. You have
Mm-hmm.
to So it's quite that type of thing, all the detail
Mm-hmm.
that goes into it. But that's why I suggest to anybody who competes, like, have a packing
Mm-hmm.
list because there's so much stuff you have to bring when you travel. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the essentials. I mean, I couldn't agree more. But now, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize, because I've had so many people on the show, ask me, they're like, "Oh, these bodybuilders that you have on, they must just be jacked and shredded like 365 days out of the year," and that is not the case. A lot of people don't realize that when you guys are ready for those shows, you sort of manipulate your body through all of the dieting and working out into a look that isn't really sustainable. I mean, we've had so many stories of people who put on weight even that night. They put on like 5 pounds just because they eat so much. I mean, of course, it's like water weight, so they're going to lose a little bit. But then people, weeks old, they put like 30 or 40 pounds on in a couple of weeks just because they really go off the rail. Was that difficult for you, sort of realizing that, all this hard work that I put into looking this way, it's not sustainable and that I am going to eventually have to put on weight? Was that ever a struggle for you, sort of coming to terms with that?
yeah, I think the reverse diet is probably one of the hardest things. I know for myself personally, the reverse is the hardest. Once I get into prep mode, like I'm in prep mode, and I do longer preps to help me eliminate things and to get to the percent of leanness. So then afterward, especially when there's nothing set for near future, it's kind of like, and it can create a lot of it's a huge struggle, but I think you learn as time goes on. And I mean, some of the things that I do, that I tell myself, is that my favorite foods aren't going anywhere. They're going to be there when I'm ready for them. And if you stay on track, you can have them on your fun meal
Mm-hmm.
days. So like I said, it is for me, the hardest part of the process. And but it's a necessary, I mean, it's necessary to gain weight when you're subpar body fat percentages. I mean, it's not healthy. You are manipulating your body for a stage look, and it's so important to go back to get your body back to a healthy body fat percentage, not only for your mental sanity, but your body needs to function correctly.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. I mean, there's
um,
there's so many things that where people just sometimes try to keep that look, and it just really doesn't turn out so well because I mean, like I said, I mean, for guys it's
mhm,
a little bit easier to sort of maintain a look like that, but for women
right,
especially, I mean, because guys can maintain that lower body fat percentage for longer, but still, even with guys that I've had
yeah.
on too, it's like it's not it's not going to end up good for you if you just keep trying like that, because then I mean, there's so many risks that go with that, and it's just so a lot of
Well,
people. Oh, you can go,
go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh no, you can
What
go.
I found is that, my body kind of goes through phases after a show. Like, I'm about 6 weeks out from my last
Mm-hmm.
show right now, and I am up about 12 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but my body will go through a phase where, it hasn't been used to all these foods that it's getting. So it does kind of look a little softer, and, I retain water. But then, after a couple months, it's okay. Now my body's responding better. It's absorbing these nutrients from these foods better. So it'll start to tighten back up again. So I have to remind myself, that my body's going through a process to get back
Mm-hmm.
to where it naturally likes to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And, hell, you have the fuel, lift heavy now and build some muscle
Yeah.
out of
Oh,
that that's
absolutely.
coming back on. So, I mean, and transition your goals, and then always start to set new goals for yourself with, as soon as you can,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as you're ready after that show. I mean, you need to give yourself a little bit of a mental break. You need to give yourself have fun in the gym again and not be so strict and regimented. And you do need to allow yourself to have things because that's part of life. And so, just remember that everything is going to balance back out as long as you let it.
Absolutely. That's just you just learn to go with the flow and go with the changes. I mean, bodybuilding especially is probably one of the biggest examples of having a roller coaster. I mean, with all of your ups and downs that you go through. But what inspired you to make that change from figure to physique? Was it just at a point where you just said, I'm getting a little too big for figure, or was physique always sort of the goal for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. I mean, no, physique was
Mhm,
never like I was never like, yeah, I'm going to get to physique.
mhm,
It was just, I did figure, and I just in my 2017 year, I had 2 years off in between, and my prep was going well, and my lean down was going well, and I was, just getting super conditioned and continuing to get super conditioned. So my coach and I said, let's try it.
mhm.
And, started practicing the posing and gave it a try. And then from there, the judges say that, my physique can go either way depending on
Mhm,
how lean I come in. So if I wanted to, I could do figure, but
mhm.
I personally like physique.
Yeah.
So that's what I stay with. I like the challenge of getting that much more conditioned.
Mhm.
So, because figure's hard
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's awesome because we have so many people that just make that change that really were thinking about it. But for you, you're just like, hey, might as well give it a try. Which is, I mean, I love that
Yeah.
type of attitude. So yeah, that's awesome. But now, what is your go-to post-show meal?
So for me, I prefer dessert.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, I eat bison, and so I'm having burgers
Mhm.
quite a bit. I'm having steak in my prep. So for those type of foods, I'm like, I can, I'm gonna
Uh-huh.
have them. And so I like, the biggest brownie you
Yeah.
can with ice cream and,
Yeah.
chocolate
Hmm.
syrup, and, maybe throw a chocolate chip cookie in there
Hmm.
too, and some caramel
Yeah.
sauce. So
Oh, that just
that's what I
you're making my mouth water right now. So
like.
yeah. So I mean, you're also a gym owner. At what point did you decide that you wanted to own a gym? Was that early on, or was that something over time where you're just like, hey, that would be a really awesome thing to do?
After I had started doing shows and
Hmm.
I was training at another gym, I just kind of started thinking about looking for a space. And so it was one of those things that popped into my mind. And, I started, looking online at spaces, and I met my landlord and talked about like where I wanted to go and what other businesses were there. And we found a good synergy and were able to make it work. So, I knew that fitness was going to be a part of my life, and that I do a lot of things where, it's super scheduled and controlled and regimented. And it's kind of like, let's take a risk.
Hmm.
And so it was that's me being a risk taker.
Well, yeah.
It's
I mean that's awesome. So what's the name of the place?
called the Body Boutique.
The Body Boutique. So okay, and if your guys
Yeah.
are anywhere in the Wisconsin area and you know the Body Boutique, everyone definitely go and check it out.
Come visit me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, everyone go and visit there. But now these two questions I always love to ask all my guests, and for me, I mean, when I started to get really big and really strong and muscular in college, one of the things that I really didn't like though is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next few months before I move out, and every time they come home with groceries, I mean, I basically have to lift the car into the driveway and take out the groceries. Is that something that you sort of found out too, or just because, I mean, the more that you got into bodybuilding, the more people just thought that you could do favors for them just by taking a look at you?
But the more people ask me if I want to arm wrestle,
Yeah.
like, and I think that's so weird. I'm always like, no, I don't want a rotator cuff injury. I'm like, I don't arm. I'll
Yeah.
wrestle you.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, it got to the point. Well, being 6'3" too. Also, I mean, people just take one look at me and I could have a sweater on, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, that guy can do it." So, but yeah, it got to a point where I just realized it's like, hey, they're recognizing the hard work. So I've accepted it now. But even like last summer, like every week there'd be a different friend who'd be like, "Hey Ryan, you want to come help me move my chair, my couch? I'm moving out or whatever." And it just it got to a point where I mean, my schedule got so busy. But now I also, this is a multi-million-dollar idea for anyone out there who's listening. When it comes to clothes for fit women, your clothing options can be limited. I always like to say if you have big shoulders, dresses aren't really your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of that are really, really hard. What are some ways that you've sort of compensated for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
I only wear gym clothes.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. No. I mean, 95% of the time I'm in gym clothes. I mean, that's my life. But I, so for me, I'm short, so I always have to have things altered. Anyways, so I mean, it's a struggle. I'll tell you, it definitely is a struggle. But yeah, so if anybody knows of a brand,
That's what I keep saying every guest on I had 2 fashion people on and I said, come up with something like that. We have plenty of people who would be willing to buy it. I mean, it's a great idea, 100%.
There you go, you do it.
I'm not into fashion. I could not.
No?
I mean, I could help them with marketing or something like that. But
Sure.
yeah. So I know I'm fingers crossed, 100%. But now, I mean, we both live in the upper Midwest where it can get very, very cold during the winter. I mean, we're in the season now where it can get very, very dreadful. What are some ways that you still sort of are able to motivate yourself to get out there and go to the gym when basically your body is just telling you, no, let's stay inside by a fireplace and just watch TV?
Well, I mean, my clients motivate me. It's important for me to show them, lead by example. So, I want to stay healthy and fit to show them that, that it's possible and that it's not just you get fit and then then you're not fit. You let it go. It is a lifestyle. And so, my clients, my family, I can't be my best for my family if I don't feel my best.
Yep.
So those are big motivators, and it's also just a motivator for me, just looking at what taking progress photos and looking at what I look like. I mean, I always know I need to rein it in when I can't see my bicep vein.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so like for me, that's an indication that, okay, it's time to, maybe check yourself and stop taking those extra handfuls or that extra peanut butter pop or the samples at the grocery store.
Yep.
So
Yep, always. Yeah, I have my thing too, where it's like whenever I start to look and my belly just comes out just a little bit more than I'd like it to, then I'm always like, okay, now it's time I got to go on the treadmill a little bit more and sort of get back what it is. So yeah, it's always a work in progress, like you said. But also, I mean, being that you are in Wisconsin too, where it's such a huge culture of drinking and cheese curds, basically whenever anyone thinks about Wisconsin, it's cheese and beer because it's so ingrained in the culture. Is that hard for you, especially when you're on prep, to just not go out with friends or not go out for drinks? Because for people who don't realize, I mean, I preach this whenever we've had a couple of guests from Wisconsin. I preach this. Wisconsin, I mean, they are the #1 state when it comes to beer consumption by far. I mean, they beat out everyone by far. And cheese consumption, I mean, that's huge. And cheese is really big and fat. Is that a struggle for you at all during prep to sort of rein yourself in and not go out when everyone else is?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, competing can be isolating, especially when, the more deep into it you get and the more it becomes your lifestyle. I mean, I consider myself an athlete, like any type of athlete you'd see on TV. Our sport is just not as widely known.
Yeah.
So it is hard because you want to be engaged. But I mean, for me, the drinking is not hard because I don't drink, period. So, which is weird for somebody in Wisconsin, but it's just not part of my
we
life.
found the one person, everyone.
It's not part of my life, and it's not that I never have.
Mhm.
I just decided
Yeah.
that it's not for me. And luckily for me, I'm lactose intolerant, or
Oh, yep.
unluckily for me, so the cheese thing. But that was only found out through
Oh,
elimination,
yep,
through a
yep,
prep.
yep. The
So
process of elimination. Yep.
so you learn from it too. But it's hard, I think, in general, no matter where you live when
Mhm.
you're in prep, because you have to say no a lot.
Mhm.
And so I think that's hard. But I know for me, at first, my friends, like when I was doing my first show, they would be like, "Oh, you can just have one sip. You can just have this one
Mhm.
bite." And I would be like, "No, no, no," which was very hard.
Mhm.
And then after I started winning and I would have stuff, they'd be like, "You can't have that."
Yeah.
And I'd be like, "Well, wait a second. Like you used to peer pressure me, and
Yep.
now you're like." So I think people also, if you educate them on why, you know, they'll understand. And if they love you and they're your friend, they're not gonna make you do something that you don't want to do.
Absolutely, and that can be a hard thing too, especially like going out and just being like, "Oh, I'll just have the water, I'll just have the salad" when you're at a place. I mean, that's difficult in and of itself. But one of the misconceptions too that I love to bust is that it's gotten better the last 10 years or 5 years because of Instagram. But a lot of women believe that if they go to the gym, they're just going to hulk out and put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight just by touching a weight. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started out? And even if you didn't, what is your best piece of advice for that? I mean, being a trainer, also an online fitness trainer, and owning a gym, I bet you hear that, I bet you've heard that 100 times. What is your response to that?
To look like that takes a lot of time and effort. And, what you're looking to do and what we'll write your program for wouldn't be for bulking up. And lifting weights is actually going to make you leaner, because
Mm-hmm.
the more muscle you have, the more fat you're going to burn. So again, it's about educating them on that. But I mean, believe me, ladies, it would take a lot in the kitchen for you to bulk out.
Yeah.
It's not just going to lift that weight in the gym. So lift the weights
Mm-hmm.
and then eat properly, and you'll become leaner.
I was gonna say, everyone just look at her, and she's been training for how long? And does she look like Hulk Hogan or Dwayne the Rock Johnson or any of those guys? It's like, come on, people. It's always the one of the misconceptions that I always love to bust. And another one that a lot of people actually don't really think of is that sometimes when people see these bodybuilders in the gym, they just assume that they're kind of like power lifters, where they can just lift an incredible amount of weight, but they don't realize for bodybuilding, sometimes you're training just for the aesthetic look. Well, I mean, you're still gonna be stronger than the normal person, but aesthetically you're more trained towards that. Do you ever lift heavy in the gym, or is it more for you just the aesthetic, like doing high reps, high volume?
No, personally, I believe you need to do a combination of
Mhm.
both. I mean, and I think there's no right or wrong way to lift. There's definitely rules, but rules are always meant to be broken.
Mhm.
And, I do lift heavy. I mean, in fact, I'm writing my new lifting program now as I transition out, and I have a heavy day for each body
Mhm.
part and a high rep low weight for each body part. So, I do both.
Yeah.
Um, and
That's
I do both consistently. Now, as you're in your final, stretch of
mhm.
prep, for me, like when I prep, I do anywhere from 28 to 32 weeks.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and again, like, let's talk about the beginning of that is okay, so we're starting to figure out where my best macros are going to be at the beginning of
Mhm.
my prep, and starting to eliminate some of those extras. So it's not, I'm still in a surplus
Mhm.
at the beginning, and then we're slowly bringing it down. And it's more for me mentally, because it takes me about a good 6 to 8 weeks to get in the
Mhm.
mental game.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I need the longer prep.
So now here's the part of the podcast where you just absolutely embarrass us. What are some of your best lifts then in the gym?
My best lifts,
Yeah.
I love deadlifting, and I love pull-ups, weighted
How
pull-ups,
many pull-ups can you do?
like with no weights,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe like 15, 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get to weighted, and it drops quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
What about like bench and deadlift and squat?
I love to bench.
Mhm.
Bench is actually probably my strongest lift.
Mhm.
Before I leaned down for this last prep, I was at 145 for
Wow.
3. So, and then, I just recently started going back into benching. I gave myself a little bit of time to get some weight on. And so I will test actually my bench this week.
Oh, wow.
But deadlift I did last week, and I didn't one rep max, but I did 215 for 6. I was
Wow.
able to bang out. So, but before that, I was stronger.
Yeah.
So I'm not I don't. I'm old school
Yeah.
bodybuilding. Like I don't lift. I'm not a power
Mm-hmm.
lifter. I'm not a CrossFitter. I think all those things are
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So I don't consider myself a power builder. I just train for bodybuilding,
Mm-hmm.
and those lifts are part of building your body, building your physique.
Absolutely, and I always say if you can bench press more than your own weight, that's impressive in and of itself.
Yeah.
So that's unbelievable. But now we go to our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire. I'm going to ask Noelle here about a dozen or so questions and see how she stacks up to all the other health and fit guests that we've had on the show. So for our
Oh, the
first,
pressure.
oh, there's so much pressure. So for the first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
Oh, my go-to workout song at the moment, Limp Bizkit. Just one of those days.
Wow, that is a good one.
Yeah.
That is actually the third time that we've had that song on. So it's out of like 90 guests, I think that's Bohemian Rhapsody is probably I think that's 4, so that's probably the number one. But yeah, so now out of all of the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with any celebrity, who would it be?
All the celebrities on the planet, if I could work out with any celebrity, Dana Lynn Bailey.
Ooh, that's a good one. My old college, she was there in August to like open up a gym down there. I went to Mankato, so she was down there to open up a gym, and I wasn't there, but I saw that on Instagram, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, she would be a good one. Thank you for not saying The Rock, because that's our answer, 95% of the time. So yes, we have variety on here, everyone. So
I would
now,
do Dana Lynn Bailey, Nicole Wilkins. Yeah, any of those girls.
yeah, they are great. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
Ooh, if I could train any celebrity, who would it be? I would have to say Will Ferrell.
Ooh, that's our first Will Ferrell answer. But yeah, that would. Here's the problem though with
Just
like.
because I'm not quite sure what to do with my hands. I
Oh well,
love Will Ferrell.
yeah.
He's amazing.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the one problem with that though. Is like with guys like Kevin Hart, Will Ferrell, and we've had Ellen DeGeneres on. You're not gonna be able to get a workout in because they're just gonna make you laugh the entire
I
time. I mean, it's
know.
gonna be the best ab workout of all time, but that's gonna be the only thing that you're really going to be able to accomplish. So, but yeah, Will Ferrell. That's our first Will Ferrell. So we got Will Ferrell on the board. But now,
All right.
absolutely. So now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Eggs.
Mm-hmm. Wait, being lactose intolerant or eggs sort of how do you do that then?
When I do eggs,
Mm-hmm.
I usually only eat one full egg,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is whites. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, egg whites, or eggs, that's probably our second most popular answer behind chicken. So yeah, we got another one on there for eggs. But now, what is one thing that people who follow you on Instagram would be surprised to know about you if they met you in person?
I think they're surprised at how small I am.
How tall are you?
5'1".
Yeah,
so
that's it.
I think like based off like how muscular I am when they see me in person, it's like they're like, wow. She's a little midget.
Yeah, we have so many guests on here too. We're like, people just assume that on Instagram that they're like 5'10" or something like that, and then our guests get met in person. And people are like, "Oh, you're actually like 5'2", 5'3", 5 feet tall." It's like, wow. So yeah, that's by far, our most popular answer for that. But now, what was the last TV show that you binge watched?
The Final Table on Netflix.
That's the first time we've had the Final Table on, but I recommend that to everyone. I watched that too. It's very, very
awesome.
Good. Yeah, it's so great to have them sit down and talk, and yeah, it's unbelievable. But now, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
Of all time, Friends.
Awesome. So now I actually have something to tell you then. So in a week, I'm having the lady that played Ross's first wife, Carol, on the podcast.
Oh
The
yeah.
lesbian, yeah, because she started a charity, and we've been emailing the last few months and trying to find a right time. And I did say, we talk about her charity, but I said, you do realize half the questions are going to be friends questions, right? And she goes, oh yeah, I get that all the time. So yeah, I'll definitely send you the link to that one when that gets posted, because yeah, I'm gonna get the entire backstory. I've been coming up with like the 30 to 40 best friends questions, and just we're gonna get down to it and see what it was like being on that show, because I think that's gonna be really, really cool. But now, what is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
Guilty pleasure movie that I enjoy. Um, Man, these are tough questions. Movie that I enjoy. 50 First Dates.
Ooh, that's the first Sandler movie that we've had on here.
Yeah, with Drew Barrymore.
Yep. Oh yeah, I love all of his movies except the ones that he's been making recently, just because they have dipped in quality. But yeah, all of his old school movies like Happy Gilmore and Billy Madison are some of my favorite movies. But yeah, 51st Dates, that is definitely a good one. But now, what is one thing that you would change about the sport of bodybuilding if you had the all knowing power to do so?
So the one thing I would change about natural bodybuilding is the fact that there's no unity between organizations.
Oh, okay.
I think that if I could change that and it be just one big organization where all the competitors could come together and compete against one another, and the banned substances were the same,
Yep.
and I think overall, for us as athletes, we would reap so many more benefits from what we do. And I think because it's the hardest sport there is, um, that unity would be awesome.
Oh, 100%. That would be great. Definitely to have that unity, because like people don't realize. I had powerlifting guests on too, and it's the same story. There are just so many different federations, and the rules are different for every federation. Where, I mean, if you placed first in one federation, you might not be able to place. I mean, it's just there's so much stuff
Right.
that goes into that 100%. But now, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give her?
I would tell her that everything works out,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that you think are a big deal really aren't as big of a deal as they are, and just breathe and learn from everything.
Absolutely, 100%. That would be my answer as well. But now for our last question in the questionnaire, what is your favorite fashion trend of all time and least favorite fashion trend of all time?
Ooh, my favorite fashion trend of all time is the wide leg
Mm-hmm.
pant. It makes me look taller. And my least favorite fashion trend is the man bun.
Yep. Yep. That's a good. I mean, for me, it's like flannel, because being in the upper Midwest, I mean, you're gonna be cold, so that's probably my favorite. But my least favorite is actually fanny packs. I'm sorry. Like my dad wore one in the late
Really?
'90s. My dad wore one in the late '90s, and now it still scars me to this day when I see old photos. And I know it's making sort of a small comeback. Where if I can do anything on this podcast, the one thing that I do is to help to spread the awareness of like we got to stop fanny packs. It's like girls can pull off a fanny pack, but those guys where you're just like, what are you doing? That's just yeah. I could do a whole like 10-hour podcast on that. Just like what's so bad about fanny packs, especially for guys. But I mean, I'll save everyone that energy for a different podcast. But yeah, I mean, so we got our questionnaire done now with Noel. So now, I mean, I know you said that you're 6 weeks out of a show, but are you preparing at all for any other shows? Or I mean, do you have any dates in mind of when you're going to compete next? Or are you just sort of taking it easy now?
So we'll see where life takes me, but my 2020 is when I'll compete again,
Oh, okay.
probably. You know,
Yeah.
I just did 2 years in a row, so I'm gonna give my body a little much needed break and
Mm-hmm.
recover and recuperate and focus on building up my strength and building my size. And 2020, we
Yep.
will see what comes from underneath. Comes underneath.
Absolutely. Everyone look out for her in 2020. I highly recommend it. I mean, I'll leave a link down below to her Instagram. And again, if you're in the Wisconsin area, go to her gym. I highly, highly recommend
Yes,
it.
come lift with me.
100%. But now, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up here?
Um, Yeah, I always like to give shout outs to my girl Tori Hartman. That so Fit Hard on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. She is one of my biggest inspirations, and love you, girl.
All right, there we go. And again, you guys, Noel Brue, we can't thank you enough for coming on the show. Everyone, go and give her a follow down below. I mean, I'll leave her link. Super inspiring. Like I always say, just looking at some of her photos, you will be inspired to get off the couch and go to the gym and stop eating those Twinkies. I highly, highly recommend it. And again, we wish you nothing but the best in all of your future endeavors when it comes to competing or anything else. Thank you so much for coming on. You were an absolutely great guest. And again,
Thank you.
100%. And again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.
Great day, guys.